At Thanksgiving, I asked my daughter, your wedding photos looked amazing, so when's your actual wedding? She smiled, that was my wedding. Now I know. I was still reaching for the cranberry dish when my daughter looked across the Thanksgiving table and said, almost gently, Mom, that was my wedding for a moment. The rest of the room kept moving chairs, shifted glasses, clinked. Caleb said something to his brother. The kitchen timer beeped in the background, and then the words sank in, landing so sharply in my chest that I forgot how to breathe. I stared at her, my fingers hovering over the dish. Your wedding photos looked beautiful. I said, my voice thin. I just meant, when's the real wedding? The ceremony. Marissa didn't blink. She only offered that small measured smile she had perfected over the years. You saw it? She said that was it. A fork tapped against porcelain somewhere down the table, then stopped. The conversation around us folded like someone had turned down the volume. I heard a guest clear his throat. Caleb's mother pressed her napkin to her lips. No one looked confused. No one looked surprised, and that was the part that made my stomach drop. I felt the air thicken around me. I do not understand. I whispered, still trying to laugh it off. Still clinging to the hope that this was one of her dry jokes. Surely you would have told me before, I did not want a big thing. Marissa cut in. We kept it small, very small. Her tone wasn't cruel, it was worse. Careful, practiced, as if she had rehearsed this moment and I was already behind the script. I looked down the long, crowded table. Caleb avoided my eyes. His sister Lydia reached for her glass too quickly. Even the youngest cousins kept their heads down, spooning potatoes with exaggerated focus. Every single person seated there knew, all of them had seen something I had not, all of them had been part of a moment meant to exclude only one person. My hands trembled as I folded my napkin into my lap. I forced a steady breath, trying to hold myself together in a room that felt suddenly foreign. I kept my eyes on Marissa, waiting for an explanation she did not offer. I knew this wasn't the place to push. Not with everyone watching, not with my heartbeat thudding painfully in my ears. I told myself I would ask her later. I would get answers somehow. And as the table slowly returned to small talk, I sat perfectly still, already feeling the first tear in the quiet place between us. The one I had pretended not to notice for years widening beyond anything I could ignore. I sat on the edge of my bed early the next morning, the house still quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ribs. My phone lay face down beside me. I turned it over and opened my messages with a heaviness I could feel in my hands. The thread with Marissa stretched back weeks. A picture of her in that cream dress standing under soft light. I had typed. Beautiful shot, darling. Are you doing an engagement shoot? Her reply had come an hour later, just a small heart emoji, nothing more. A few days after that I sent, when you have a minute, call me. I want to hear about this photographer. She answered. Busy today, Mom, then nothing. Dozens of little gray bubbles showing message delivered. Message read several times. Read within minutes, and then silence. No explanation. No conversation. I scrolled slowly. My thumb almost hesitant. I had tried again 2 weeks ago, should I save a day for your wedding planning? That one had the word seen under it, time-stamped early in the morning, and after that, the line of the screen simply stopped. I felt my cheeks heat as the pieces slid into place. She had not forgotten to respond. She had chosen not to. A soft knock pulled me back. I stepped into the hallway just as my neighbor, Mr. Fletcher, was sweeping his porch. He looked up with that easy southern friendliness. He always carried Evelyn morning to you. He called, heard about Marissa's wedding. Must have been a sweet little ceremony. I gripped the railing to steady myself. You heard? Well, sure. He said. My niece works over at the floral shop near the river, said your daughter looked lovely. He smiled, unaware of the way his words hit me. Hope you got good photos out of it. I forced a nod, unable to push sound past my throat. I felt his kindness slide over me like thin fabric, doing nothing to hide the humiliation underneath. Back inside. I shut the door gently and leaned against it. Phone still in my hand. Those brief replies, the empty space between them, the small heart she had tossed my way. They formed a pattern I could no longer smooth over. The quiet between us no longer felt accidental. It felt constructed piece by piece, message by message, as if she had been building a wall. Long before I realized I was standing on the wrong side of it. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea growing cold between my palms. The kind of morning silence that gives too much room for memory. It had been decades since Henry walked out of our small Savannah home, but the sound of that slammed door still lived somewhere deep in my ribs. Marissa had been 9, thin-voiced and wide-eyed, watching me hold myself together with both hands. Back then, I told myself I had to be strong. I told her the same thing. Straighten your shoulders. I would say before school, look people in the eye. Do not let anyone think you were raised without standards. She would nod, her chin tight, her backpack slipping down one arm when she began dance classes. I clapped the loudest, but I also corrected the most point. Your toes, I whispered from the front row. You are better than that. She looked at me once with an expression I did not understand. Then something caught between wanting to please me and wanting to escape the room altogether. That same look returned as she grew older. On the Mother's Day after her college graduation, she did not come by. She called in the evening and said, I lost track of time, but her voice sounded defensive as if she expected an argument. I never gave. A few years later, she sent me the invitation to her housewarming 2 days before the event. I asked why it came so late. She said the printer messed up, but she avoided my eyes when she handed it to me. Last year, we planned a lunch near Forsyth Park. I waited nearly an hour before calling her. She answered softly. I am sorry, I forgot, and ended the call quickly, promising to reschedule. She never did. I cupped my tea with both hands, letting the warmth press into my skin. These moments felt sharper. Now, pieces clicking into place. The space between us had not opened overnight. It had stretched inch by inch with every unreturned message and every softened truth, and I had stepped around it telling myself she was busy, grown, independent, anything but distant. I sat at the dining table with my phone propped against a coaster, the screen still showing the same photo I had stared at the night before. Marissa stood under a small arch of white flowers, her dress simple. Her hair pinned low. The image was lovely, too lovely, and yet the longer I looked, the more it tightened something inside me. The venue seemed intimate, almost cramped, like the backroom of a bed and breakfast. There were maybe 10 guests in the frame. No family, no cousins, no lifelong friends, not even Caleb's parents. It looked like a ceremony held in secret, tucked away from anyone who might ask a question. I zoomed in, studying the edges behind Marissa. Near a table draped in linen stood a woman I had never seen, gray suit, clipped smile. Her hands clasped as if she were guiding the event. She looked like someone from Caleb's side, but even that guest felt uncertain. I pressed call on the first name that came to mind. Ruth Abernathy picked up on the second ring. Morning, Evelyn. She said, you sound early. I was looking at the photos again. I said, Ruth, were you aware? Did Marissa say anything about keeping the ceremony so small? A pause stretched long enough that I heard her shift the phone. Honey, I thought you knew she did not want a big crowd. My breath stilled. You thought I knew. Ruth exhaled. A soft, guilty sound. She mentioned wanting something quiet. I figured you and she talked about it already. She never said a word. Ruth hesitated again, and that hesitation cut deeper than anything else. I did not want to get in the middle. She murmured. I truly thought you were aware. I ended the call politely, thanking her, but my hand shook as I set the phone down. I tapped the photo once more, staring at that unknown woman standing behind my daughter. The arrangement felt deliberate, cropped, tidy, as if someone had worked hard to make sure the camera saw only what they wanted captured. I stepped onto the porch as the evening settled over Savannah. The air thick enough to clinging to my skin. My phone felt heavier than it should as I scrolled to Anne's name. She had always been gentle with me, too gentle to lie outright. If anyone would offer a clean truth, it would be her. She answered on the first ring. Evelyn, everything. All right. I need to ask you something. I said. Did Marissa mention anything to you about her wedding? Anything at all? Silence spread across the line. Not the kind of silence that comes from thinking. This one felt like someone carefully choosing what not to say. I waited, gripping the porch rail until my fingers stiffened. When Anne finally spoke, her voice came out wavering. Evelyn, I do not know how to say this without making it worse. Just say it. She breathed in shakily. Marissa asked us not to mention the wedding to you. She said it would complicate things. My knees weakened so quickly, I had to lower myself onto the wooden step. The humidity pressed against my throat. Complicate things. How she did not explain. Anne said softly. She only said it was better to keep it simple and that she would tell you herself. She did not tell me anything. I whispered. I thought you knew. I swear I did. I would never have kept quiet if I had understood you were in the dark. Her voice trembled with real guilt, but it did nothing to dull the sting rising inside me. I shut my eyes. Her words settle like grit. She told all of you not to say a word. She made it seem like you two were already talking. Anne murmured. I am so sorry. I thanked her and ended the call. My thumb lingering on the screen. A cold edge settled beneath my ribs as I sat there in the warm evening air. Someone had worked hard to keep me out of that day. And the truth was beginning to take a shape I could no longer ignore. I sat at the kitchen table, the phone resting between my palms. I had run out of people to ask on my side of the family. Every answer circled back to the same quiet avoidance. If there was any truth left to find, it would come from Caleb's side. His sister, Lydia Norris, had always been polite to me, warm in a reserved way. Careful with her words. She was the only person I could think to call. I pressed her name and held my breath. She answered quickly. Mrs. Marlowe, is everything all right? I just need a moment of honesty. I said, did you see anything about Marissa's wedding guest list? Even a hint, her inhale crackled through the speaker. I am not sure I should get involved. I am already involved. I said quietly. I just do not know the truth. Another pause. I could almost hear her weighing loyalty against decency. All right, she whispered. I did see the list briefly. Caleb asked me to check something the day they finalized. Names. My stomach tightened. Could you tell me who was on it? No, she said, voice trembling, but I can show you a moment later. My phone buzzed. A single image appeared, a photo of a printed sheet on a clipboard. The header read, Final Ceremony, Guest List. Lydia had cropped everything except the column of names. I opened it slowly, scrolling with a thumb that felt suddenly numb. Friends from Marissa's college days. A couple from her old dance class, distant relatives from Henry's side. I had not heard from in years, people I had never met. Caleb's coworkers, new neighbors, acquaintances, line after line of familiar and unfamiliar names, but mine was not there. I kept scrolling even when the page ended, as if my name might appear if I gave it enough time. It was not an oversight. Lydia said softly. The list was approved exactly as it is. A sharp breath rattled out of me. She erased me. I am so sorry, Lydia murmured. I hoped she would explain it herself. I thanked her, though the words wavered, and ended the call. The screen dimmed in my hand, but the list stayed burned behind my eyes. The truth was no longer a guess or a suspicion. It was printed, arranged, and submitted without a single space left for me. I chose a small cafe near the Savannah River, a place quiet enough that neither of us could hide behind noise. I arrived early and waited at a corner table, hands folded to keep them from shaking. When Marissa walked in, she spotted me immediately. Her shoulders were tight. Her mouth said, in a practiced calm, she sat without a greeting. You said it was important. It is. I said, I just want to understand, why was I not there? Her eyes flicked toward the window, then back to me. I do not want to go over this again. We have never gone over it at all. She exhaled sharply, like she had been holding it in for years. Fine. You want the truth. I could not deal with your expectations every big moment in my life. You turned it into something. It had to look like, not something. It felt like I blinked, Marissa. I never. Yes, you did. She leaned forward, voice rising. You always make everything about how it looks. When I danced, you corrected me in front of everyone. When I had friends over, you straightened the house like inspectors were coming. When I told you about Caleb, you reminded me how people would talk because he did not finish college. Her words landed one after another, unfiltered, raw. I wanted a day where I did not feel judged. She said I wanted a day where I could breathe, a day that did not belong to you. My throat tightened. I did not want to take anything from you. You do not see it. She said quietly. You have this way of filling a room. You mean well, but you take over, you overshadow everything. I tried to speak, but she pushed on. I wanted my wedding. Small, simple, peaceful, and I knew if you were there, it would turn into something else, something I would have to manage. So you cut me out entirely. I made the choice that felt safest. She said, voice barely above a whisper. For me, I looked at her, really looked at her, and the truth settled in my chest with a weight that did not shift. She had not forgotten me. She had not slipped. She had decided. I walked the long way home from the cafe, letting my feet take whatever path they wanted. The oak-lined streets of Savannah blurred at the edges and the tears that slipped down my face. I felt strangely calm, as if my body had already accepted what my mind was still denying. My breath stayed steady, my steps never faltered. It was the inside of me that broke in quiet, controlled pieces. When I reached my porch, I sat on the top step and let the late afternoon settle around me. My hands were still trembling. I pressed them together until the shaking eased. A soft creak sounded behind me. Mr. Fletcher from next door stepped onto his porch, broom in hand. He paused when he saw me. You all right over? Evelyn, I wiped my cheek. Just a long day. He nodded, the kind of nod that offered space instead of questions. Holler if you need anything. I will. I said, though both of us knew I would nod when he went back inside. I lowered my head into my hands. Marissa's voice replayed in my mind. Not the words, but the way she delivered them. Cold certainty, a practiced defense. She had shaped her life around avoiding the version of me she carried in her memory, and nothing I said at that table could soften it. I whispered into the quiet, I cannot force you to want me. The truth of it pressed down like a steady weight. I loved her, but love had become something jagged between us, full of corners that left cuts no matter how carefully I reached for her. I had spent years trying to bridge the distance, pretending each small, slight was just a misunderstanding. A busy day, a moment she would make up for, but she had made her choice. She had made it clearly, and she had made it without me. I will not beg for a place in your life. I said softly, letting the words settle. Not anymore. The air felt different after I spoke. Not lighter but honest. I sat there until the sun dropped low, letting the quiet rise around me. I told myself I would let her come to me if she ever chose to. If not, I would still find a way to stand steady, letting go hurt, like something tearing slow and deliberate. But I held on to the feeling anyway because pretending had become far more painful than the truth. The next few days moved slowly. Not in the way heavy grief drags time. It was quieter, softer, as if the world around me sensed I needed gentler hands. On Tuesday afternoon, Ruth Abernathy knocked on my door without warning. When I opened it, she held a pot wrapped in a towel. I made chicken soup. She said, the real kind, not the canned kind. You pretend to like. I stepped aside. You did not have to come all the way over here. She set the pot on the counter and touched my arm. I know I hesitated on the phone. I should have told you what I knew. I am sorry for that. Her voice held a sincerity that loosened something in me. Thank you for being here now. I said the next morning. I found Mr. Fletcher on my porch ladder fiddling with the light fixture. That thing has been buzzing for weeks. He said when he noticed me, figured I would fix it before it sparks. You did not need to do that. I told him. He waved a hand. Yes, I did. You looked worn out the other day. A good porch light never solved anything big, but it helps folks feel less alone. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Lydia Norris. I heard things were difficult. I cannot imagine how that felt. I want you to know you deserved better than being left out. I read it twice, my chest tightening. For reasons I could not name. I typed back slowly. Thank you. That means more than you know. She replied, if you ever want company for coffee, I am here. I set the phone down and sat back in my chair. It surprised me. The warmth rising through all the places I had gone cold. These people, none bound to me by blood, had stepped closer without being asked. They offered presence, not pity, and in their small gestures, I felt myself steadying in ways I had not expected. The email arrived just after sunrise. Sunrise? I had barely finished my first sip of tea when my phone buzzed with Marissa's name. The subject line read, I need to explain. I opened it slowly. Her message stretched on for paragraphs. She wrote about boundaries. She wrote about pressure. She wrote about childhood wounds that still followed her. Every line felt polished, softened by phrases she must have learned in therapy: emotional space, protective distance, personal peace. Between those phrases, I could see the blame folded carefully into the corners. I read it twice before my fingers hovered over the keyboard. My reply poured out in long sentences full of every truth I had never said aloud. I wrote about raising her alone. I wrote about trying too hard and not knowing how to stop. I wrote about my hurt, my love, my confusion. When I reached the end, I stared at what I had typed, breath caught in my chest. Then I hit delete, not out of anger, not out of punishment. Only because I needed to stop handing her parts of myself she did not want. I closed the email and let the quiet settle. A week passed before anything else happened. One afternoon I found a small envelope in my mailbox with Lydia's looping handwriting. Inside was a printed card, the original wedding invitation design, soft florals around the border. Elegant script. My eyes moved to the corner where a line of handwriting curved in dark ink: "Do not send to Mom." I held it carefully. The paper cool against my thumb. The truth no longer burned. It simply existed clear and solid in my hands. I stepped onto the porch, letting the warm Savannah air wrap around me. The cicadas hummed faintly in the distance. I closed my eyes, breathed in, and whispered. Now I know not just about the wedding, but about what I could no longer carry for her. I set the envelope aside for the first time in a long while. I let myself think about what came next, what peace might look like when I finally chose it for myself.